UFC Fight Night, Cory Sandhagen, Yadong Song, to another prediction video by yours truly here at Boxing MMA Picks. Full card prediction video. He goes by Zahn, I go by Harris, and here at Boxing MMA Picks, as usual, breaking these fights down from the betting perspective. We want to let you know which fights are worth the value, which fights to avoid, which underdog has the best shot at winning, and some parlay action towards the end of the video as well. Make sure you hit the thumbs up on this video. Make sure you hit the subscribe button as well. We'd love for you to subscribe here to Boxing MMA Picks. And most importantly, we want to hear from you in the comments. For this UFC Fight Night, very busy event. We have 14 fights overall. 6 of them are on the main card. 8 of them are on the prelims. So we're going to get right to work right away with fight number 1 of our prelims. We are looking at Nikolas Motta versus Cameron VanCamp. Nikolas Motta lost to Jim Miller back in February. He's introduced as a kickboxer. Patient on the feet early in the fight. He's going to use those fakes, the feints, try to get a read on his opponents. He fights at distance. Not really the most active striker. You look at his striking rate over there, not really the best. Explosive when he does throw, though. He picks up the pace as the fight goes on as well. Got to respect his power. You look at his record there, 12 professional wins. 8 of those are via KO, TKO. Decent combinations when his hands do get active, when he does decide to pick it up. Has a decent jab as well. Not really the most diverse striker, though. So kind of good at what he does, but can't really do much else beyond that. Cameron VanCamp, on the other hand, lost to Andre Fiallo in his debut back in March. First thing you want to notice is that he is coming down in weight. He's fought at 170 in the past, so it'll be interesting to see what he looks like at 155 as a lightweight. 9 of his 15 wins are via submission, so I think that is telling. 13 of his 15 wins overall have ended in a finish. Of course, that could be by way of just lower level competition. Switch stance fighter, he's not really the most technically sound. He is going to use those jabs pretty regularly. He does have some power. Not afraid to engage by any means, not afraid to push the pace. Otherwise, expect for him to fight from range with a lot of movement. He will actively look for takedowns at some point in his fights. His top control is pretty decent as a grappler, kind of a position over submission type of style. He is pretty good at landing submissions, pretty good at finding the neck specifically. I would consider VanCamp a bit more of a specialist when it comes to his grappling. I wouldn't really consider him a threat on the feet. Doesn't really have the best striking IQ, doesn't really have the best striking defense. And I really think it's the lack of striking defense that could be costly here for VanCamp. Also in VanCamp's last fight, he kept it standing. In his debut, of course, he kept it standing. He didn't really make takedowns a priority. So that tells me that he may not really game plan effectively here. I do think that this fight is a little bit closer than the odds may indicate. Every time Nikolas Motta has lost, he's been finished. He's been knocked out 3 times. He's been submitted once. He was also submitted on Ultimate Fighter Brazil, but that was an exhibition match, not counting toward his record. So that alone tells you that anything can happen in this fight. VanCamp will be the bigger fighter here, not only with height, not only with reach, but again, coming down in weight. Again, fighting from range, using his movement, definitely live as an underdog, if you ask me. But I think VanCamp will play right into the type of striking match that Nikolas Motta wants. I think Nikolas Motta is the cleaner striker as well as the more dangerous striker. And like we saw in VanCamp's last fight, even if for some reason he is winning those early striking exchanges in the fight, one punch from the opponent can quickly turn things around. I do think Nikolas Motta has that power to knock him out. And if he doesn't, I think he could just be the better striker for a fight that may primarily occur on the feet. So a little bit long-winded, but I'm going with Nikolas Motta to start things off here.
Yeah, good breakdown. This is a lot closer, definitely a lot closer than the odds are saying here. VanCamp was a big welterweight, and now he's coming down to lightweight. He's gonna have a massive size advantage over Nikolas Motta in this fight. He should have the grappling edge as well, so he's gonna want to get this fight to the mat. His stand-up, we've seen some of it in his previous fight in the UFC. One thing that stood out was the the hands low. He has his hands down. He's not. He doesn't have the defensive awareness. He's gonna get hit. And Motta, he's not an active striker because he's trying to counter. And I think VanCamp's going to give him openings, especially with his hands down. VanCamp can get him to the mat, but Motta has shown that he knows how to defend the grappling. So I think he's going to be all right for the majority of the fight. And I think on the feet, I think the counters, Motta will be there all fight for him. But again, yeah, this is a tough fight as far as the odds go. Minus 200, that's crazy being VanCamp has such a big size advantage. He has power. He almost knocked out the other guy in his previous fight in the UFC, stunned him. So he definitely has the power to put Motta out. So I'm going to go with Nikolas Motta, though, with the counters. Smaller guy, so it's a risky fight, but I just think he's the better fighter at this point.
Second fight of our prelims, Tony Gravely versus Javid Basharat. Tony Gravely, he's on a 2-fight winning streak after he beat Johnny Munoz Jr. back in June. A kickboxer, wrestler type of fighter, so that's going to naturally make him a pretty decent all-around fighter. He is athletic, not really bad in any one area. He's light on the feet, has quick hands, good striking IQ, throws good technical combinations as well. Very regular usage of leg kicks. Look for a quick calf kick out of him, typically as kind of like a combination starter. And sharp hands if he sticks to the boxing, and of course the wrestling. You look at his numbers there, almost 7 takedowns per fight. So that definitely tells you he has good wrestling. He has that takedown ability. Although he can be out grappled, but definitely has that wrestling ability, that takedown ability. Going up against Javid Basharat, who beat Trevin Jones in his debut back in March. 12 wins. You see his record there, 12-0. He's undefeated. 11 of those 12 wins are via finish, 5 of them via TKO, 6 of them via submission. He's a switch stance fighter, very well-rounded, clean, fluid stand-up. The striking diversity looks good. The calf kicks look good. The in-and-out movement looks good. He does have a Taekwondo background, so that's going to lead to him having good footwork as well. He has good timing, really good striking IQ, and very elusive in the pocket. He's also really good at putting a consistent pressure and pace on you that it's hard for some to be able to handle, and good top control as well if he is able to get the fight to the ground. We see his numbers there, obviously small sample size, but 1.5 takedowns per shows you that he has the ability to get it there. He has active ground and pound, good positional improvements, and we know we can find the submission. Javid Basharat looked very impressive in his debut versus a solid opponent in Trevin Jones. I think the key to this fight is how well does Javid Basharat handle Tony Gravely's takedown attempts. Gravely lands, again, takedowns at a very high rate. We see the numbers there at almost 7 per. Trevin Jones isn't quite as intentional with takedowns as Tony Gravely is, but Javid Basharat showed that he can defend them. To that point, I do think Gravely may be susceptible to land a few takedowns, though. But that said, Gravely has never really been the best at keeping guys down. So I can see Basharat, if he is taken down, making his way back to his feet in those situations. And although Gravely, again, is capable and legit with his striking, I do think Javid Basharat is just simply at a higher level in that area. We've seen Tony Gravely get KO'd before as well. I think that has the opportunity to happen here. I'm not going to bet knockout specifically, but what I am sort of banking on in this one is Javid Basharat being the higher level striker, Gravely being a capable striker, and therefore wanting to strike with him. I can also see most of Gravely's takedown attempts being stuffed, but if he is to land a takedown, I can see Javid Basharat getting up fairly quickly, fairly easily, possibly still, keeping that round open in terms of scoring. So I'm looking at Javid Basharat to get it done. Again, we've seen Tony Gravely against these types of fighters, and he potentially gets knocked out. We've seen it happen before. So Javid Basharat is going to be my pick. Somewhat of a close fight. Gravely does have some advantages, but I think Javid Basharat has some key advantages, specifically with the striking.
Okay, this is a big test for Javid. He had a big test in his first fight in the UFC. But Tony Gravely, this guy has legitimate offensive wrestling. He's gonna He's going to test Javid's takedown defense in this fight. He's a strong guy. He's looking better on the feet. He's showing that his boxing's improving. So this is a real indicator to see where Javid is at, because he's still new to this UFC. I see Tapology's loving him over there, and it makes sense. This guy is legit. This guy is good everywhere. Just like his brother, who was on the Contender Series, who looked really well. These guys are like the Pettis brothers when they were good. Sergio's still good, but basically the Pettis brothers in their prime with grappling, with really good wrestling. That's what these guys bring to the table. So in the wrestling in this fight, he should be able to handle his own. He should be able to avoid getting finished on the mat. He should be able to get this back up to his feet. We know Gravely is chinny a bit. He's been knocked out many times. And we know that as the fight goes on, his cardio is not the same. We've seen Javid go 3 rounds with Trevin Giles, another tough guy in the UFC. We've seen him take heavy shots. You got to like Javid in this spot. Gravely can definitely get it done, but you got to go with Javid here. The better stand-up, the better cardio. He hasn't been finished here. And he's fought Giles, right? So I like Javid in the spot. He should get this done.
And just for clarification, you are thinking of Trevin Jones.
Messed up.
Is coming up in conversation.
Yeah. All right.
But we will get to that. Let's get to fight number 3 of our prelims. We have Mariya Agapova versus Gillian Robertson. Agapova lost to Mayra Munoz back in March. She is introduced as a kickboxer. She has an aggressive style of striking, southpaw, throws good combinations, fights from the outside, has a bit of a stick and move type of style. She also has a good pace, solid power as well, and just overall a pretty dynamic striker. Her thing is volume and aggression more so than technique, and her combinations are pretty well timed. She has good striking speed. One key thing to note in this fight, just 42% takedown defense. Flat out, she just really isn't that great on the ground. I think that's a huge hole in her game. That's obviously going to be very relevant in this fight going up against Gillian Robertson. Unanimous decision loss to JJ Aldrich. That was also in March. We know Gillian's going to try to bring the fight to the ground. On the feet, she is trying to improve. Normally she keeps distance until she kind of finds her moment to shoot in. But she's been trying to be that fighter coming forward more often, striking first more often. I still would consider her to be maybe average at best. I would call her maybe below average on the feet. Still very hittable. So definitely don't look for her to have many moments in the striking. And if she does get you down, which we see the takedown numbers there are pretty solid, 2.36 per at 40% accuracy. She does have good top control. She's probably a better grappler than she is a wrestler, though. Good submissions. She's a BJJ black belt. And that's going to kind of make this a striker versus grappler wrestler type of matchup. Robertson has a big ground advantage. I think Agapova has a big striking advantage. So it's going to be really interesting to see who can implement their game plan. Agapova looked kind of disappointing in her last fight. She's just not really the prospect that I thought she could be, at least based on what she's showing me. That said, she can use her movement. She can use her striking diversity, her striking speed, again, to clearly win these striking exchanges. But I do believe at some point within each round, I do believe that Gillian Robertson will be able to land a takedown. There's certain fighters that I never really want to bet on. Gillian Robertson is one of them. So I definitely will not place any coin on this. But I believe that she can make it a very frustrating fight for Mariya Agapova and essentially pull out the decision. So Gillian Robertson is going to be my pick. The groundwork, the wrestling, the takedowns, the grappling. I think it'll be too much for Mariya Agapova.
Yeah, you pretty much broke it down, man. Agapova has that big striking advantage in this fight. She's going to be dangerous if the fight stays there. Gillian Robertson has really bad striking, but this girl has good cardio, and Agapova doesn't have good cardio, and that's going to be a big thing in this fight. Gillian's going to look for takedowns. She's going to get this to the mat. It could just take one takedown. In that Marina Moreau's fight, she looked horrible, man, on the mat. She looked lost. It seems like Gillian just needs one takedown each round, and Agapova is going to have issues getting back to her feet. Gillian's a finisher when she gets it to the mat as well. So I look for her to get this done, man. That big hole Agapova has with the grappling, and then she's gonna be fighting one of the better flyweight grapplers the UFC has. This is a bad matchup for her. But again, she can win. There is an avenue. She can definitely hurt her on the feet, keep it standing. But I think Gillian just needs one takedown to seal each round. So I'm going to go Gillian Robertson. Better cardio to get this one done.
Fourth fight of our prelims, Trey Ogden versus Daniel Zellhuber. Trey Ogden split decision loss to Jordan Levitt back in April. He light on the feet, decent striking, good in and out movement, good striking pace as well as good striking diversity. He uses that pace to try to close distance. So look for him to fight coming forward. He can land takedowns as well. He is a grappler as well. 11 of his 15 wins are via submission. And he showed good takedown defense in his debut, of course, against Jordan Levitt, who is, primarily looking to take the fight to the ground. I do think that his striking defense is lacking, though, and I think his cardio is lacking, sort of more importantly. Daniel Zellhuber, on the other hand, he's an undefeated Mexican newcomer. He last competed September last year, 2021, on Dana White Contender Series. He's very tall, very long for the division. Going to have a 5-inch reach advantage in this one, 2 inches in height. Has solid Muay Thai, fights from range with that longer reach. The striking is pretty solid too. He has a good long jab, good combinations, good striking pace, good striking technique, and a good chin. Took, quite a few good shots in his Dana White Contender Series fight. He showed he had an ability to weather the storm in that one. I liked what I saw in that one specifically. Good power as well. Again, he's undefeated at 12-0. 7 of those 12 wins are via KO, TKO. And I have seen him land takedowns. Not really a go-to part of his game, but I have seen him land it. Still very young as well, so might be getting better since the last time we've seen him. Again, it's been a year since that match on Dana White Contender Series. I do think, Zellhuber is maybe a bit too good on paper here. He's going to have the physical advantages. I mentioned those already. I think he's going to have the striking advantage. Again, like I mentioned, Trey Ogden specifically, that striking defense is lacking. And I think he's going to have a key cardio advantage in this fight. While Ogden may have the grappling advantage, I feel like if he tries that, it's going to come at the expense of his cardio, which just, again, isn't great. Ogden also doesn't really have the best striking defense. I'm going to highlight that again because, Zellhuber can really start to pick him apart on the feet in a fight that could stay on the feet. So I'm going Daniel Zellhuber on this one. I would have a higher confidence level if, there was really any UFC experience on either of these guys. But without it and knowing that X factor can happen without UFC experience, skill-wise, analytically, I'm going to have to go with Daniel Zellhuber.
Yeah, I'm with you, man. I'm going Zellhuber as well. For me, Trey Ogden, this guy got outstruck by Jordan Levitt. I just don't think Trey Ogden's UFC level, man. The takedowns, the grappling, he couldn't really take down Jordan Levitt. And then again, he got outstruck by Jordan Levitt. That is crazy, right? So Daniel Zellhuber has really good stand-up. He's going to be the longer guy. I really think this guy's pretty good. I think this guy has some grappling to negate the wrestling from Trey Ogden. I don't think Trey Ogden has that high level. I think Daniel might even be the one to get takedowns and be the better grappler in this fight. But one thing's for sure is that Daniel has the better cardio, better striking. He's going to have the reach. And I think this is a good spot, man. I think this is a good parlay piece. He's a new guy, right? But I think the UFC wants him to win here. So they gave him a guy that he'll look really good against, right? So Daniel Zellhuber is my pick.
All right, let's move on then to fight number 5 of our prelims, Denise Gomes versus Loma Lookboonmee. For Denise Gomes, UFC newcomer, she competed on Dana White Contender Series in August. She looks comfortable on the feet from what I've seen. Solid hands, solid striking, good pressure and pace. She's usually the aggressor in her fights from what I've seen, and expect her to keep the fight on the feet. Very much a striker. So is Loma Lookboonmee in a lot of ways. She lost to Lupi Godinez back in November. Again, very much a striker. She has a Muay Thai background. She's from Thailand. Her kicks are her primary weapon. Good calf kick, good push kicks. pretty smooth on the feet in general. In the clinch, really good short range elbows, really good activity with those knees as well. Again, that sort of classic Muay Thai clinch is what she has the ability to do in those moments. She's going to sneak in that trip as well, leading to her takedown numbers. Almost 1.5 takedowns per fight, a decent 68% takedown defense as well. And that number was a lot higher before she gave up 5 takedowns to Lupi Godinez in her last fight. And of course, we know Lupi to have good takedowns. Either way, I don't think that takedown number is going to be relevant here. I do think this is going to be a good striking match, but I'm leaning towards Lookboonmee for a couple of reasons. I think Lookboonmee's striking is cleaner. We've seen Gomes in fights where she's losing the striking exchanges before her opponents essentially gas out. So although, Gomes is a good striker, I don't necessarily consider her to be the same level of striker that Lookboonmee is. Again, I think Lookboonmee will be more consistent. And that push kick specifically that Lookboonmee really likes, I think that's going to be key to keeping Denise Gomes from really charging in. And secondly, the UFC experience. I mean, this is Lookboonmee's 6th fight now in the UFC, whereas, again, Denise Gomes is a newcomer. So I'm looking at Lookboonmee to get this done here. Higher level striker, more UFC experience. I think she gets the job done.
Yeah, this fight could be interesting though. Women's fight. Yeah, Lookboonmee's look good with the stand up, right? She has a high level Muay Thai. Denise Gomes, she looked good on the Contender Series. That's a tough one, man. But I think when it comes down to it, is Lookboonmee for me edges it here. I just think she's overall the better striker. I do think Gomes can cause problems. I think Gomes does have some power that can definitely, if it lands, it could definitely change the fight. But I just like Loma, man. Like her experience in the octagon, she's fought higher level people in this. This is a step down for her, and at the end of the day, she's one of the better strikers in this division. When you look at strikers, right? So I think she's the better striker here as well. She's gonna mix in the kicks, the elbows, the clinches. Yeah, she's good here, man. So I like Loma to get the win here.
Fight number 6 of the prelims, and now we're getting to Trevin Giles as he takes on Louis Cosce. Trevin Giles is on a 2-fight losing streak. 2 tough fights though. He lost to Michael Morales back in January. Good hands in the stand-up. He's patient. He shows good level changes, good fakes and feints as well. It has a good long jab, good calf kick, and it has good combinations, good in and out footwork, good striking speed as well. Has really good distance control. He kind of stays just out of his opponent's range, and he has decent wrestling and decent clinch work against the cage as well to kind of round out his game. You look at the numbers there, almost 1.5 takedowns per fight. Good takedown attempts in terms of his accuracy, 64% takedown accuracy. But he can be taken down if we're talking defensively here. But in general, I will say he has the IQ to fight them off. I do think that he has pretty decent takedown defense, pretty decent balance. If you look at his numbers, he has 75% takedown defense. Only 7 takedowns given up in 9 UFC fights, and also has that ability to get back up if he's taken down. So, pretty solid, pretty well-rounded fighter there in Trevin Giles, taking on Louis Cosce, who hasn't fought since November 2020. That's when he lost to Sasha Palatnikov. If you recall that fight, he was, cruising in round 1, almost ended the fight, gassed out. Sasha Palatnikov really just started to take over. To that point about Louis Cosce, likes to come forward on the feet, very aggressive forward pace, especially early in that fight. Technically not really the best on the feet. The footwork is lacking a bit. I think the striking technique is lacking a bit. But again, I think he's more about that forward pressure and pace and that power, right? 5 of his 7 wins are via KO, TKO. He can land takedowns. He does have decent wrestling. He has some good ground and pound to go along with it. But again, big red flag with Louis Cosce. The cardio just simply is not good. Expect him to gas out within that first round, especially for the pace that he tries to go at early in the fight. I think Trevin Giles really is just better everywhere here, right? I think he has a huge striking speed advantage. I think he has a huge movement advantage. I also think he's the more diverse striker, and I also think he's a better wrestler in this situation as well. Even if he isn't, I do think his takedown defense is solid enough to stop Louis Cosce's takedowns. I mean, you look at obviously small sample size, but a 10% takedown accuracy in really just one UFC fight, that tells me that he's attempting them, but unsuccessfully. And again, more importantly, I mentioned that gas tank already. It's horrible. So as long as Trevin Giles survives the first round, I think he's kind of all but guaranteed here. I mean, this is a huge step down in competition. Never want to put that guaranteed stamp on it, but I'm looking at this fight and I'm really liking Trevin Giles here, especially at minus 220. More than likely going to be a parlay piece for me. Trevin Giles is my pick.
It's a good fight. Trevin Giles should have the advantage everywhere. He should be the favorite in the spot. Cosce has that first round. He wants to get you out of there real early. And it's going to be hard because Trevin Giles is legit, man. This guy's he should have the better stand up to avoid the hard shots. He has a good one too. Trevin Giles can easily just play off his jab the whole first round. Because after that first round, Cosce, he's in a gas, right? And at that point, I think Giles is going to look for the knockout in this fight. I like Giles as well in this spot, but as far as parlay piece, it's hard for me. He's a guy that's hard to depend on, right? He looks good in fights, and then all of a sudden you get a drink and you come back and he lost the fight, right? He's that type of guy, and but I think in this fight he's fighting he's fighting down. He's fighting Louis Cosce. He's been fighting much better guys than this, and he should be better. He's gonna be the bigger guy, 6 foot, pushing that jab. He should look good in this spot. So I like Trevin Giles here to get the win.
Fight number 7 of our prelims: Aspen Ladd versus Sara McMann. Aspen Ladd is on a 2-fight losing streak. She had a UD loss to Gail Pennington. That was back in April. She's going to put a lot into her strikes on the feet. She's more of a boxer in the stand-up than anything else, mostly hands, some head movement, a bit of a brawler at times. She's going to take one to give one, definitely willing to exchange, and again, continue coming forward kind of no matter what at times. I'm not sure if it's an IQ thing or just a lack of ability, but she kind of moves at a sparring pace, doesn't really do much in the early rounds to influence the judges. That said, she does have a good extra gear when momentum swings her way or when she is in desperation and when she kind of needs something to go in her favor. She does have a good extra gear that a lot of women just haven't been able to handle. She has good takedowns as well, decent average there, 1.5 takedowns per, almost 50% accuracy. Good top pressure, aggressive ground and pound. Just 62% takedown defense, though, which is going to be very relevant going up against Sara McMann, who beat Carol Hossa back in March. Very impressive win. We know that she wants to bring the fight to the ground. She's going to level change. She's going to grab the single, complete the takedown, have that top control, improve position, smother, and just win the round. Strong grappling, strong chain wrestling, and again, just physically strong overall. Her stand-up, serviceable. She has made improvements to the stand-up, but again, it is fairly basic. Otherwise, just kind of look for a lot of fakes from her, a lot of feints, as she's ultimately going to try to set up that takedown. In some ways, this is a striker versus wrestler type of matchup, Ladd being the striker here, of course. So that means that they both have legitimate paths to victory. I think Ladd needs a win badly here. Hasn't had a win since 2019, somehow still ranked number 7 in the bantamweight division for women. So lets you know where that division is at. Women with worse wrestling than McMann have taken Ladd down without too much problem. Though McMahon's striking is fairly basic, I do believe that it is good enough to not be threatened by Ladd's stand-up. My basis for that, I feel like she proved that versus Carol Hossa, who I believe is a better striker than Aspen Ladd. McMann was not afraid to stand up in that fight and really only used it enough to resort to her takedowns. So I do think this could potentially be a bad matchup for Aspen Ladd. I think Aspen Ladd's striking is only a bit better than McMahon's, while McMahon's wrestling is a lot better. More importantly, again, I think McMann has multiple round cardio, and we know that she has a wrestling first mentality and game plan. So I think McMann is going to frustrate Aspen Ladd, and I think Aspen Ladd is going to rack up another loss here. I'm going with the underdog, Sara McMann.
Yeah, this fight, man, for me, man, like Aspen Ladd, I'm not even sure where she's at. If she's UFC level still, she hasn't been looking good in these fights, and it looks like she doesn't belong, right? Like, it seems like she went stagnant. She hasn't really improved her game. When you really look at her wins in the UFC, it's not really impressive. Yeah, it's not really impressive. The Yana Kunitskaya fight, that showed heart. The Sijara Eubanks fight, that's the only win, right? And then the other fights, when she loses, it doesn't even look competitive. The Raquel Pennington fight was not competitive. Norma Dumont made easy work. Jermaine Durandamy was 20 seconds, right? So I'm not, man, I'm not sure, man. This definitely she has the ability to throw that shot to change the fight. But when it comes to this fight, I'm not even sure I don't know who's the better striker, because I don't think Aspen Ladd has that good striking. I think she benefits fighting fighters that have that hole in their grappling that she can kind of go at. In this fight, Sara McMann's going to be the better grappler. Silver medalist, I believe it was, Olympics or something like that. But she's definitely the better grappler. She has that really good wrestling, and she's going to come out here. She's going to definitely win the first round. Second round, not sure. But she's live for the second, third round. Aspen Ladd has issues cutting weight. She hasn't had issues in a while. But I think Sara McMann's the better fighter now. We're going to find out if Aspen Ladd is still UFC level. They're giving her a 39, 40-year-old fighter. So we're going to find out if she wins this fight. Great, let's go. But I can't put anything on Aspen Ladd. I don't trust her. I don't think she's at this level. And I think Sara McMann can easily squeeze out 2 rounds against Aspen Ladd at this point. So I'm going to go with Sara McMann here to get the win.
Final fight of our prelims. In that case, we have Damon Jackson versus Pat Sabatini. Damon Jackson on a 3-fight win streak now after beating David Argueta back in June. Decent boxing, decent kickboxing. Not really the cleanest technically, but decent combinations, good pace, and good activity on the feet. He does have suspect takedown defense, although he has that grappling ability on the ground off of his back, no matter what situation he's in. And offensively, he is a pretty good, effective wrestler. He's going to grind it out against the cage for as long as he needs to in order to try to land that takedown. He's going to commit to the takedown, chain the wrestling together, look for a solid body lock, really active on the ground too in terms of his top control. We know that Damon Jackson's going to have heart, cardio, aggressiveness, and game plans pretty well. Finds a way to win rounds and put fights in his favor. Going up against Pat Sabatini, who's 4-0 in the UFC now, 6-fight win streak overall after he beat TJ Laramie back in April. Ground game specialist, so this is going to be a very interesting matchup here. He has great top control, D1 wrestler, also a BJJ black belt, so legitimately credentialed. Again, we look at his record there, 17 wins, 11 of them are via submission. Serviceable stand-up. He is going to move around, fight from the outside, fight from distance, a little bit of a switch stance. He's going to throw multiple strikes at a time, definitely has some power too. Most importantly, I think he's patient with his ground approach. He does a good job at setting things up, very methodical with it, looking to put you in a vulnerable situation. What's interesting about this fight is that both fighters, again, they want to resort to that takedown, right? They want to resort to landing, bringing the fight to the ground, I should say. And both fighters don't really have the best takedown defense. So I find that interesting too, because that's going to leave an opportunity for both fighters and makes it a really hard one for me to bet on. I don't think I'm interested in betting on this fight. I've been going back and forth on this one, but I am going to lean toward Pat Sabatini. I think there's great value on Damon Jackson here. I actually think Damon Jackson has the better striking, while definitely having the ground game to compete. I also think again he can land takedowns of his own, just given Pat Sabatini's takedown defense percentage. He is able to be taken down. The thing for Sabatini though is that I feel like he's going to have a key strength advantage here. Guys who have a ground game, guys who are physically strong, we've seen Damon Jackson struggle a little bit against those types of guys, not only to take them down, but also on the flip side, we've seen those types of opponents take Damon Jackson down multiple times. So, overall, I think Pat Sabatini's ground game is going to be more effective here because of that strength difference that I could, anticipate in this fight. And I think it's inevitable for this fight to end up on the ground pretty much in all 3 rounds. So it's going to be an interesting one. I think it's a close fight. I'm not interested in betting on this one because, again, Damon Jackson finds a way to get it done. But in terms of making a pick, I think Pat Sabatini also finds a way to get it done. And Pat Sabatini is going to be my pick.
Yeah, for me, man, I think Sabatini gets it done, man. I think he's going to squeeze out the first 2 rounds. Damon Jackson, I can see him coming on in the 3rd round. I just, as good as Damon Jackson is in this spot, it's a good fight for him because he's fighting a guy that's going to fight him in his area. I just think Sabatini has the better grappling. I think Sabatini has the better submissions. I think Sabatini's the more dangerous grappler, but Jackson definitely is live. He has cardio for days. So this guy could come in really good shape and just really go at a high pace for 3 rounds. He might have the better striking, but I think Pat Sabatini has shown that he has the fight-ending power that can change the fight or change the sequence of the fight with one strike versus Damon Jackson. So I like Sabatini here, man. I think he can hold his own in the striking. I think he's definitely improving. Jackson's not even that good in striking, so he defensively, if Sabatini comes on with good offensive striking, Damon Jackson does not have the defense to stop it. So they're both going to have their areas. They're both going to be able to strike in this fight. They both have bad striking defense. But, yeah, Sabatini, I just think, is a level above Jackson in the grappling. And I think he can squeeze out 2 rounds. I think he has good enough cardio for that. 3rd round might get sticky, but I think Sabatini survives the 3rd round push from Jackson.
Let's move on to our main card. Looking at the first fight of the main card, we have Anthony Hernandez versus Marc-André Barriault. Hernandez, 2-fight win streak. He beat Josh Fremd back in April. He's introduced as a striker. Decent hands, decent power, decent combinations, decent in and out movement. He kind of puts the pressure on you, almost blitzes forward at times, really high activity. Good knowledge on the ground. Of course, we saw that in the Rodolfo Vieira fight. But just in general, in grappling exchanges, but also in his last fight versus Josh Fremd, he also showed that he can land takedowns. I wouldn't put too much into the number there, 5 takedowns per at 70% accuracy. I wouldn't put too much into that, but he can definitely land takedowns, showed a lot of chain wrestling, positional improvements, and then again, those submission attempts in that last fight. And I was pretty satisfied with his cardio, amongst that high pace that he was showing in his last fight. Shows that his cardio can be reliable. Marc-André Barriault beat Jordan Wright back in April. Also introduced as a striker. He has a good jab. He covers up well. He's going to look for those counter-punching opportunities, mixing in the calf kick as well. Puts the pressure on you, comes forward. So it's going to be interesting to see, 2 fighters that want to put the pressure on who's going to have their way. He is a decent striker, decent combinations, has a decent uppercut in close as well. I don't think Barriault has really the best takedown defense. I think he struggles against fighters that have a ground game, bit one-dimensional from that regard. Does have some clinch, does have some dirty boxing against the cage. Otherwise, pretty much wants to stay on the feet, right? Consistent pace on the feet, decent, but vulnerable on the ground. I think this is an interesting fight. I wouldn't really bet on either fighter, just in general. Barriault's striking, I believe, is the cleaner of the 2, but I do think they're pretty evenly matched otherwise in terms of their striking, in terms of their pace. I think both guys can have moments on the feet. Though Hernandez isn't a wrestling specialist by any means, I do believe his takedowns will be a key advantage for him in this fight, especially against the poor takedown defense of Barriault. And again, in his last fight, Hernandez showed me that he can make takedowns a priority and a game plan in order to win rounds when he needs to. Really needed to do that in that 3rd round to pull the fight out and pull the fight out in his favor. So I'm going to have to go with Anthony Hernandez here, just simply based on having more tools, more ways to win, and proving in his last fight that he can really game plan around those tools versus Marc-André Barriault, who doesn't really have the best takedown defense. Otherwise, striking should be pretty even, and I'm going with Anthony Hernandez as a result.
Okay. Yeah, this fight, man. The striking, as far as the striking goes, I don't know who's the better striker, man. These guys both aren't that high level, but Marc-André Barriault, he's really good in the clinch, holding against the cage. Hernandez has the takedowns, good cardio. Both have good cardio, but Hernandez has that good cardio even when he pushes a high pace and he holds that cardio for 3 rounds. I think that's gonna be a big thing in this fight. I think mixing in the takedowns is gonna be a good thing. Marc-André Barriault is not good off his back. I could see him ending up on his stomach, giving up his back for a choke. So that's one scenario. But I like Hernandez, man, just mixing in the wrestling, just dictating where the fight goes and pushing a pace. I think he has a better cardio, and I think he's at a better point in his career than Barriault, being 28 years old. I know Barriault's 32, but I just think that Hernandez is coming into his prime. So I'm going to go with Hernandez. Cardio, wrestling, I think he's going to get it done after the first round. First round can be sticky, but as the fight goes on, I think Hernandez gets it done.
Second fight of our main card, Tanner Boser versus Rodrigo Nascimento. Tanner Boser beat OSP, Ogden St. Preux, in his last fight. That was back in June 2021. So it has been a while. As a heavyweight, Tanner Boser, light on the feet, good movement, good low kicks that he's going to want to use as part of his kind of fight from outside strategy. He has pop in his hands, especially with that overhand right hook. He's going to switch stance as well. He presents threats in both stances, interestingly enough. As a southpaw, look for a lot of low kicks from him. As an orthodox fighter, look for that overhand right specifically. Good speed for the division, and kind of that's it, right? Not really a ground threat at all. 7 UFC fights, hasn't landed a single takedown. 70% takedown defense, I should say, in the UFC. So, just look for him to want to strike, want to keep it standing, want to fight from the outside, and want to keep it on the feet. Rodrigo Nascimento, he beat Alain Boudot back in July 2021. So it's been a while since both of these guys have fought. That fight was actually changed to a no contest. I think it was a banned substance type of thing. Introduced as a jiu-jitsu practitioner, he is a switch stance fighter. Decent Muay Thai. The kicks are decently sharp. He keeps his hands up, has a heavy right hand, likes to control the center of the octagon, likes to come forward as well. Good level changes, good fakes as well. He has a good clinch, has a strong clinch. He's going to look for takedowns in those situations. We look at his takedown numbers there, 1.7 per at 40% accuracy. The numbers, in my opinion, a little bit deceiving because you're looking at 4 UFC fights from Rodrigo Nascimento. He's only landed 2 takedowns overall, and both of those were in the Dontel Mays fight. So, although again, good clinch, good strong clinch, and will look for takedowns in those situations, doesn't necessarily mean that he will land them. If he does, though, he is good on the ground. I like his top control. He's going to look for those submissions too. 6 of his 9 wins are via submission. And of course, in the smaller UFC sample size, you see a submission average there at almost 2 per fight. So that tells you that definitely keeps it top of mind. Boser, I think, should be able to stick and move all day here. I think Boser's movement will allow him to avoid those clinch situations. And he's otherwise, the faster striker, the better striker in comparison to Rodrigo Nascimento. I think Nascimento is very live, though. Again, I thought his striking and his pressure looked good in his last fight versus Alain Boudot. And if he can implement that same style, closing the distance off well, looking for those clinch situations, I think it could potentially lead to the takedown. And that could potentially create a legitimate path for him as the bigger fighter. Boser, of course, we've seen has come up in weight a little bit, but Boser typically walks around or fights as a lighter heavyweight, whereas Rodrigo Nascimento kind of fills out the division. That said, I just don't think Nascimento will be able to do that. I think Boser is a lot different of an opponent than Boudot is. And as a result, I think Tanner Boser is going to be my pick here. Again, better on the feet, avoiding the takedowns, sticking and moving, faster, better overall striking. Tanner Boser is going to be my pick.
Yeah, this is a tough fight in a sense that one guy is the much better striker, one guy's the much better grappler. So obviously, where the fight goes, that's who's going to win the fight. Boser's my pick, though, man. Nascimento, he's really shaky on the feet. His takedowns aren't the greatest, but again, if he gets on top with that added weight as well, that's going to be a problem. Boser moves around well. Boser's going to be much quicker. He should be able to negate a lot of that. On the feet, he should be able to land his shots. He should be able to win the striking battle in this fight. So I like Boser in this spot, but one takedown can really change a lot of things here. But Boser's my pick here to get this one done.
Fight number 3 of our main card, Joe Pyfer versus Alen Amedovski. For Pyfer, UFC debut. He's on a 2-fight win streak. He fought in Dana White Contender Series back in July. Looks comfortable on the feet, fights from distance, decent striking. Nothing really special per se, but he does have good power. You know, his last 5 wins are via KO TKO, which is very impressive. Looks like he has decent takedowns too. Good wrestling, good top control, most importantly. Looks like he has, good IQ on the ground. So a pretty well-rounded fighter here. Going up against Alen Amedovski, who is on a 3-fight losing streak after losing to Joseph Holmes back in May. He has decent hands. He has decent power. All 8 of his professional wins are via KO TKO. The stand-up style is mostly hands. Don't really expect too many kicks out of him. Likes to fight from the center of the octagon. He's going to put on a good pressure, but he's a very hesitant striker. The hands just aren't really active. That significant strikes landed per minute number, probably the lowest I've seen, just in terms of paying attention to that number, 0.55 per for Alen Amedovski. That just speaks to, again, very hesitant striker, hands not being active. He does cut the ring off pretty decently, though, with the pressure that he does present. And also really doesn't really have the best takedown defense, which could be costly here. Doesn't really have a change of pace either. I do think Pyfer gets it done, as he's the more well-rounded fighter here. But again, be careful with how steep of a favorite he is as a newcomer. I mean, I think that's a legitimate warning. We just have seen too many newcomers, no matter how much they're supposed to be the favorite. Sometimes they just do not show up. Amedovski does have legitimate hands, does have legitimate power. And although, Pyfer does have wrestling, Pyfer does like to keep the fight standing for the most part. And that could make Amedovski live, I mean, in a striking match. But analytically, Pyfer should have more ways to win here, especially going up against Amedovski, who, again, just does not have the best takedown defense. So Joe Pyfer will be my pick here, but not interested in betting on this one. Just interested in making the pick, Joe Pyfer.
Yeah, Pyfer all day, man. This guy is gonna be better everywhere. Amedovski is not UFC level. I'll say it again. This guy's not UFC level. Pyfer should be able to take him down if he wants, outstrike him. I understand why he's a big favorite, but obviously he's a young guy, right? So giving him such crazy odds, and he really hasn't done anything in the UFC yet, is pretty crazy. But Amedovski's that bad, right? So I like Pyfer in this spot. I think he gets it done how he wants. Yeah, he wins this fight. Pyfer's my pick.
4th fight of our main card, Andre Fili versus Bill Algeo. Andre Fili lost to Joanderson Brito back in April. He's winless now in his last 3 fights. One of those fighters that are always going to be game. He's always going to find himself in a lot of close fights, which could be concerning, of course, from a betting perspective. He's a solid overall fighter. I've seen decent stand-up out of him. I've seen decent wrestling and takedowns out of him. I've seen decent grappling out of him. Good long jab, active jab as well. Likes to kind of march you down, come forward a bit. Definitely willing to engage as well. He has decent scrambling ability on the ground if he is taken down. Has a pretty decent defensive guard as well. Again, just one of those fighters with no glaring weakness to their game, but Also, again, one of those fighters who are always concerning to make a case to bet for because he's always going to find himself in a close fight. Going up against Bill Algeo, 2-fight winning streak. He beat Herbert Burns back in July. He's going to fight tall, long kicks, has a bit of a leg heavy attack stylistically, pretty relaxed on the feet otherwise. He's light on the feet as well, a lot of switch stance, decent fluent combinations, keeps his hands down defensively, and that will cost him at times. Also, in regards to his takedowns, I mean, we see the numbers there, just one per 50% accuracy. More importantly, just 54% takedown defense. And more importantly than that, he has been taken down in all of his fights in the UFC thus far. Cardio could be a concern as well. I definitely have seen him slow down throughout the fight, especially as it relates to that movement and that fluency that he has on the feet. I do think there's great value in Andre Fili here. Don't get me wrong. I think this fight is definitely very close. The odds indicate that for a reason. I think they're both very capable strikers, and I think they'll both have moments in the fight. Again, Fili is always in a close one. Algeo has the ability to be pretty smooth on the feet. So I can see Algeo, kind of getting a decision in his favor. But I think Andre Fili will intentionally game plan with the takedowns, especially if the striking exchanges are not going his way. We've seen him do this against strikers before. Andre Fili, I'm talking about, and I'm thinking about him landing 5 takedowns against Charles Jourdain. I'm thinking about him landing 3 takedowns against Sadiq Youssef. It just shows on paper that when he's up against a striker, he is thinking about the takedown. I think Andre Fili has more tools. UFC vet needs a win at this point. And again, I just think he has the better equipped tools to get it done. I know the risk in betting on Andre Fili, so I don't know how I feel about betting on it. At those odds, I might take a stab as a straight up play. But again, analytically, I like the options that Andre Fili has here to get the job done.
Yeah, this is a close fight in a sense that these guys fight similar. I think Fili has the better stand up, the cleaner, the prettier stand up. He could outpoint Algeo in this spot. Just having the better striking. Wrestling, he might have the better wrestling as well in this spot. Um, so he definitely has ways he could win this fight. And I want to lean towards Fili, but when I look at Algeo, I see a guy that has better cardio. He fights at a higher pace, but the cardio is the biggest thing, right? And that heart that he has. He was locked in that choke with Burns, and this guy came back, right? So there's no quitting this guy. For me, it's a tough fight. Who's the favorite? Do you have it there?
Andre Fili barely, slight favorite. It's almost pick 'em.
So he's the Andre Fili's the favorite though.
Yeah.
Okay, so yeah, for me, man, Fili hasn't won a fight since 2020, albeit he's been fighting hard fights, right? Aside from Brito, he should have won that. But Bryce Mitchell's a hard fight. Jourdain was close. Was a close fight that could have went either way. Lost to Sodiq. So he hasn't won a fight since June 2020. So we're talking 2 years, man. Like this guy's confidence must be shot. I'm gonna go with the underdog. I'm gonna go with Bill Algeo. Why? I don't know. I think Fili should be able to move around and win the fight. But I think as the fight goes on, he's going to slow down with that move around, that moving around. It's going to mess up his cardio, slow him down. And you see Algeo just keeps going. He's going to keep going. So I can see my guy losing the first round. But as the fight goes on, I think Fili's going to be less moving. He's going to be more stationary. And at that point, I think Algeo is going to be able to get to work. So I'm going to go Bill Algeo with the upset in this spot.
Fight number 5, the co-main event of the evening. We have Chidi Njokuani versus Gregory Rodriguez. I think it's a great middleweight matchup here. Njokuani's on a 4-fight win streak, 2-0 in the UFC now after beating Dusko Todorovic back in May. He's a quick striker, throws a lot of fakes and feints, throws a lot of push kicks, has a sneaky calf kick. He fights tall, has that Thai style on the feet. The kicks are definitely his primary weapon. Sneaky counter striker though, very crafty. good power too. You look at his last 4 wins, and that includes, of course, both of those UFC wins. They have been finishes, and 14 of his 22 wins overall are via KO TKO. So you definitely have to be worried about his power. You can make the same claim about Gregory Rodriguez. He beat Julian Marquez back in June, 4-1 in the UFC now. That one loss was via split decision, so very much could be 5-0. Good MMA fighter, good stand up, good grappling, has a ton of power in his own right. Good striking overall. He's going to look to control center of the octagon. He has good fakes and feints, has a good jab, good combinations, and a solid calf kick as well. Good head kick too. Has good takedowns, 2.4 takedowns per at 53% accuracy. Multiple takedowns landed in three of his 5 UFC fights, I should say. And the 2 fights where he didn't land a takedown, those were fights where he ended it within the first 3 minutes. So pretty understandable there. Also has 100% takedown defense, so don't expect him to be taken down unless it's a high-level grappler or high-level wrestler, which Chidi Njokuani I don't think is that. Gregory Rodriguez also has a BJJ black belt with high-level grappling and a lot of physical strength. So again, just really credentialed, really well-rounded as a fighter. I think this is a great fight. Again, like I said, 2 really good middleweights who can both win this fight. We've seen Njokuani lose in Bellator before, and I kind of asked myself, what led to those losses? I'm looking at opponents who were just as capable on the feet, opponents who had good pressure on the feet, opponents who paired that with a solid foundation in terms of the ground game. Gregory Rodriguez has especially good takedown defense, so I think any attempts that Chidi Njokuani makes, I don't think will be successful. I also think Gregory Rodriguez has shown that he has a solid chin. That said, we've seen Gregory Rodriguez lose in the UFC specifically, and that was against a kickboxer in Petrosian. So it tells you really that either fighter can win here. But that said, I like the value on Gregory Rodriguez. Kind of a similar reason in some ways that I mentioned in the last fight, but just a whole different entire fight. So I don't even want to compare the two. But I think Gregory Rodriguez has the better tool set required to win this fight. Has the stand up, has the pressure, has the physical strength, has the chin, has the ground game as well to really swing rounds in his favor. All he needs is the first 2, right? So I think he has the ability to do that. Can Chidi Njokuani get him out of here at any time? Yes, I think he can do that to anyone. But I think Gregory Rodriguez gets it done. Again, just better tool set, has the chin, and everything else that I mentioned as well. Gregory Rodriguez is going to be my pick.
Yeah, I agree with a lot you said, man. But the chin, man, I'm not sure on Gregory Rodriguez. He got flattened by Jordan Williams, a welterweight, right? So he got flatlined in that Contender Series fight. But yeah, from then his chin has held up against some heavy strikers in Jin Young Park, Armin Petrosian, Josh Friend, Dusko Todorovic. So his chin has held up in these spots. Now when I look at Chidi, this guy, let's put it like this, he's not coming out of nowhere. This guy's been around. He's always been that dangerous striker, just like his brother. He has a brother. What's his name? Anthony Njokuani. I think he was in the UFC as well. But pull up some shots on his brother on YouTube. These guys are really good strikers. They've always been good strikers, and if you stood with them, you're likely going to get hurt. That's how it's always been with these guys. I've been following them through Bellator. Anthony, when he was in the UFC before. When you look at Chidi, I like how you brought up his Bellator fights against, for example, John Salter. That's a guy that has no stand-up, but is a American, really good American grappler. So he's not on the Brazilian level, but he's a high-level American grappler. He was able to get this to the mat. He was able to grapple and win the fight. Koreshkov was able to get some grappling going against him as well. So that's the way to beat this guy. And nothing's changed. Jeremy Kimball, nothing's changed. So in this fight, Grigori needs to take this to the mat. I think if he stands up, I think Chidi has the power to knock him out cold. And that could definitely happen in this spot. That's why it's a 50-50 fight. But I think Grigori is going to utilize the grappling. I think Chidi has no, from the Chidi I know, doesn't have much off his back, even as far as survival. If Grigori throws in a couple of shots, he's going to go on his stomach, leave his back open for the choke, right? For the rear naked choke. So I don't like cheating in the spot. I'm going to go with Grigori Rodriguez, but it's 50-50 for a reason, because Grigori in his last fight, he didn't go to takedowns. This guy was content to stand up with, not his last fight before that against Armin Petrosian. He was content to stand up with them. Now, I thought Grigori won that fight. But again, it was a close fight. But he wanted to stand up with this guy, and he should have took him down, right? So I'm not sure if he's going to go right to the takedowns against Chidi. If he does, it's an easy win. He's going to look like a big favorite. If he doesn't take him down, he could still win the fight, but at that point, I'd favor Chidi. But I expect Grigori to mix his game around, use some takedowns, strike, use some takedowns. His grappling is really high level. So I'm going to go with Grigori to get it done. But it is a tough fight to decide on.
Final fight of our main event, or of our event, I should say, UFC Fight Night. Our main event of the evening: Cory Sandhagen versus Yadong Song. Cory Sandhagen, 2-fight losing streak. No shame that he lost a unanimous decision to Petr Yan back in October. He's going to switch stance very often, maintain very good distance, good spacing, good movement, nasty calf kick that he uses a lot. He's a patient fighter. He sets up his shots, has a very diverse striking game, really good technical boxing in addition to those dangerous kicks, and a really high striking rate. Look for him to be very active, to have that constant pace. Won't get tired, has really good cardio as well. For Yadong Song, 3-fight win streak on the flip side, after he beat Marlon Moraes back in March. He's a really good, well-rounded striker, technically sound boxing. He's going to mix in those kicks really well. Patient, good combinations, has a good right straight, solid jab as well. Decent movement on the feet, although, kind of more likely to keep the fight in range or want to be in range within fights. Only 24 years old, though, right? So this is still someone who's getting better every fight. His combinations look good. His striking speed is faster than I thought, which I think is going to be important here. And, he has good toughness, good cardio as well. And again, I mentioned that jab already. I think this is a high stakes bantamweight matchup here, of course. We've seen this type of matchup many times in the UFC. And what I mean by that is, the guy who has been at the top in Cory Sandhagen versus the guy that is rising to the top in Yadong Song. The result is usually the guy at the top shows that there's levels to it. So behind that logic, you kind of have to go with Sandhagen. I understand why he's the favorite in this fight. I think it makes sense. I think back to that Sandhagen versus Petr Yan fight, and I can see some similarities both in how that fight started as well as how that fight ended towards the second half of it. I think Sandhagen was, at first clearly outstriking just based on output, speed, movement. But at some point, Petr Yan started to find the timing, started to close distance, started to land the bigger shots with good accuracy without as much coming in return from Sandhagen. And, because of those similarities, I truly anticipate similarities in this fight. I want to go with Yadong Song here. Yadong Song might even have more power than Petr Yan in terms of his hands. And stylistically, I can see very much a similar fight happening here. I think Song's speed is a little bit underrated, and most people are expecting Sandhagen to be a lot faster, but I do think the speed will be closer than we think, but that's more of a side note. And again, I could be wrong. I mean, Sandhagen could very much show that there's levels to this. That would not surprise me at all. But I want to roll the dice on Yadong Song here. Again, fighting a similar fight. Go back and watch that Petr Yan versus Cory Sandhagen fight and really just pay attention to how that fight started trending maybe towards the end of round 2, leading into the third round. Jan really started to close distance effectively. I can see Yadong Song doing that. Jan really started to land effective striking with the hands. I can see Yadong Song doing that. And those would essentially push rounds in his favor. Sounds kind of crazy to say with who Cory Sandhagen is, but again, like I said, I'm rolling the dice on the underdog, Yadong Song.
Can you hear me?
Yep.
Okay, to me, this is a good scrap, man. I love this main event because technically this is going to be a really technical fight. Sandhagen has the movement, the footwork, but how long can you do it for, right? Can you do it for 5 rounds, right? So, and can you avoid the power, right, of Yadong Song? But the kicks, the footwork, the flying knees, the spinning elbows, that's all Cory Sandhagen. This guy is really, really good. He's a really skilled guy. When you look at Yadong's last loss was against Kyler Phillips, the movements that he does, you got to think that Cory Sandhagen has better movements. But Kyler Phillips was able to mixing the grappling, mixing the full mixed martial art game in that fight. He showed good hands, Kyler. Sandhagen has good hands, but he doesn't have the best hands. In this fight, he's not going to have the faster hands. Yadong Song has faster hands. People are forgetting that when you look at Yadong Song's record, 19-6-1, and really think about it, his record should be far better than that. And the only reason why it is what it is because this guy was like a project in China. This guy, I don't know, you look into it, but this guy was born to fight. He was put into some type of program. I don't know what he was put into, but basically they just fought. And from an early age, this guy was learning to fight. So this guy's like almost a science project. This Yadong Song guy. This guy's first fight, he's 24. If you look on his fight record, his first fight was 2013. How old is he there? So what, 13?
15.
Like, how old is this guy, right? So when you think about it, he has one loss 2014, another loss 2015, 16, another loss, 16, another loss, 17. Okay, 17. That's what? How many years ago? So this guy's 18. This guy's a different guy, man. At this point, he should definitely be the underdog in this spot. But I think that is his hands. I think his hands are too fast. I think he's going to catch Cory at some point in this fight. My only issue is he hasn't done 5 rounds. Cory definitely has shown you can go 5 rounds. That could definitely be an issue. But I think the power is something to be looked at here in this spot, that Yadong might catch him in the first or second round. As the fight goes on, Cory's not going to be moving around as much. I think Yadong comes in here prepared, mixes it up, but eventually finds the right hand. So I'm going to go with Yadong Song with the upset as well.
All right, let's take it to Vegas at that point, and let's have the underdog conversation first. I'll read them out. Underdogs are Cameron VanCamp versus Nikolas Motta, Tony Gravely, Mariya Agapova, Trey Ogden, Denise Gomes, Sara McMann, Louis Cosce, Damon Jackson, Marc-André Barriault, Rodrigo Nascimento, Alan Amadovsky, Bill Algio, Chidi Njokwani. That's actually a pick'em, so I'll count both of them as underdogs. And
Yadong. No. Grigori looks like the underdog, man.
Is he?
Doesn't matter. It doesn't matter, but it doesn't matter. I'm looking at the gambling site, that's why. But it doesn't matter.
So in terms of underdog, which one are you looking at?
I'm gonna go with Sara McMann.
Sara McMann. That would have been my pick, but I am going to go with, of course, the main event, Yadong Song, calling the underdog there. And in terms of favorites or parlays, what are we potentially taking a look at here?
Yo, if you have something, go ahead, man, because I'm just looking at these now, right? So
yeah,
if you have something, definitely go ahead. I'm actually looking at it right now.
Yeah, I do have mine. I thought this through. I thought that I will say about this card, a little bit more difficult, higher payouts for more risk. But I'm going to try to keep it as protective as I can, though there will still be some risk. I'm looking at Javid Basharat to get the job done. I'm looking at Daniel Zellhuber to get the job done. And again, I really like the value on Trevin Giles. Those three would be a 3.18. So that means that $100 will get you a total return of $318. And for our bigger bettors, $250 will get you a total return of $795.
Yeah, mine's a little different here. Are pretty close. I like Javid Basharat as well. Loma Lookboonmee. I like Joseph Pfeiffer. And hold on. I missed the one. Hold on. I'm going with no, that's it. Let me go with that.
All right, so those three.
Hold on. Sorry. Daniel Zellhuber. Sorry about that.
All good. Daniel Zellhuber as well. So 4 fights on there. 3.67 is the total payout. $100 will get you a return of $367. For our bigger bettors, $250 will return a total of $917. Let's officially sign off on that note. Again, make sure you participate in the comments. We want to hear from you. Make sure you hit the thumbs up on this video as well, and make sure you subscribe to the channel here at Boxing MMA Picks. This has been UFC Fight Night, Cory Sandhagen versus Yadong Song. Full card prediction video by yours truly here at Boxing MMA Picks. As usual, he goes by Zahn, I go by Harris, and in our usual fashion, let's get this money.
Let's get the bag.